Welcome to an overview of the corrective maintenance process inside TRIRIGA. There are two primary ways to enter requests for service in TRIRIGA. The first is through Request Central. I am logged in as a user of Request Central and I wish to report a problem. My problem is electrical in nature, and I'm going to report a lights out. The system knows where I am, but I could actually go through and change the space. I could also report this for someone else, and I can select from a floor plan where the problem is if I don't know the actual room number. I can describe my request, and I can also indicate if any assets assigned to the room are involved. I put in the problem and I'm going to submit that for processing. Now you'll see that I have an active request and it's in review in progress, which means it's pending someone's approval. The second method is through the TRIRIGA Help Desk functionality, also called Contact Center. Contact Center has a way to report problems and report on call records and KPIs around customer service. For our example, we're going to act as a call center agent and take a call from our person, Pat Problem. Now I have the option of looking up someone, or in this case, I just typed part of the name and it got the nearest match. The calls can be processed by who requested it or by a location, so someone could call and say there is a problem in a room. The system looks up my Pat problem, if there's any assets in the room, if there's other locations, and even what kind of request history Pat has. The request classification is the nature of the problem. So in this case, we're going to say I have another electrical problem, but we're going to put this one in as an outlet is out. We're going to put a comment in. We know what our SLAs are. We can look and see if there are potential solution records. And once this request is submitted, we can have comments, follow-up scheduled, and other communication. In this case, I'm just going to say, let's go ahead and dispatch this and create a service request, which has now been done. Pat Problem had originally put in a Request Central request for someone to replace a light bulb, but then Pat called the contact center with an electrical out problem, and you can see they both are on Pat's portal and they both are review in progress, so they're pending approval. We're going to log in as a finance manager to process the approvals. Approvals are not necessarily required in the system. It's part of the basic setup, but for our example, we wanted to require them. And you can see my Frank finance person has pending action items to do reviews. One is where Kathy Caller has submitted a request for an approval to have some work done. And if I open that up, then I see this request from Pat Problem that I have an electrical outlets issue. I'm going to tell the system that I wish to approve this. I could escalate this to someone else. I could also reassign it or send it back asking for information. I can also return it, which means it's not approved. But in this case, we're going to approve the action. Now, we're going to go and do a second one. This required review is the one that Pat put in herself through the Request Central. Again, you can see this is a lights out issue and her request. And we will go ahead and approve that one as well. TRIRIGA has a service assignment system that allows you to take into consideration the location of the person reporting the problem. You can also take into account the organization they belong to, the nature of the problem, and you can do it by geography as well. I've logged in as a supervisor of the maintenance team who is responsible for the Charlotte Watson Center where Pat is located. You can see his screen has information on supply and demand of his resources, responsiveness gauges. We have overdue task, budgets versus actual. There's a tremendous amount of information. But for our purposes, we're going to go look at the maintenance side as far as maintenance management. TRIRIGA contains many tools in order to assign tasks. You can look at the tasks themselves. You can use a resource manager from a resource perspective. We're going to use the maintenance manager for our particular problem. Maintenance manager knows that I'm a part of 3 different organizations, 1 work group and 2 different departments, and I'm only going to see data and work tasks where these organizations are responsible for fulfilling them. Okay. If I go to my task, we're going to get the ones that are ready to be started. And you see there is a corrective maintenance for lights out pending. We can open this task. I know that maintenance services is responsible for that. I'm going to go over to resources. And I'm going to assign this to a member of my team. When I do a find people, I only see members of my team, although optionally I can widen that search. So I'm going to assign this to a guy I've been working. And now that task has been assigned to him. Now we're going to change over to a maintenance technicians portal, specifically Ben Working, who's the supervisor just assigned a task to. You can see that he has this lights out task pending. And when he opens it, he sees basic information on the work task versus the supervisor who had a lot of details. He can put in his resolution. He can put in time entry, and he can add any kind of parts that he used or equipment, and you can even go back and look at the original request. We can attach procedures that give him instructions on how to do things. He could identify opportunities to make improvements based on the work that he did. He could do meter readings. He could put in a work analysis, other things that are important. But he's going to mark this as complete. He took care of the problem, and you'll see that it's no longer on his portal. Now back in my maintenance manager's portal, he can identify a completed task, and at this point he has a couple of things that he can do. He can either go through and check off multiple tasks and close these tasks. Typically technicians aren't allowed to do a final close, they only do a complete. So it's possible for him to do that. The other thing that he can do is open an individual task if he wants to review it. And now he has the option to close it, or he could reopen it if it needs further investigation or the work wasn't done correctly. One of the things you will notice when looking at the work task from the maintenance manager's view, there are many tabs here with additional information. So the work task is very detailed for a maintenance manager, but if you are a technician, this is the view that our technician had. I'm going to close this task, and it is now complete and closed. And if we go back in as Pat problem, we will see that the one that reported a light out is now gone because it has been completed. We'll also see action items. we have requested that Pat do an evaluation of Ben working, the person who fulfilled her work. This is an optional part of the system to do surveys. Pat can select an answer for each of the questions. And doesn't have to actually put all of them in if wished, and has now completed the survey. That's the end of our short overview of the TRIRIGA Corrective Maintenance Process.